this session.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Mason, and I'm going to be the MC for this event. I'd like to welcome you to the Enhancing Privacy and Security track. And this session is Level Up Gamified Cybersecurity Training and Workforce Development with Haiku Incorporated. My partner today in running this session is Kyle Westmoreland. He'll be the host. And I'd like to recognize our Platinum and Gold sponsors, Unisys, AWS, Deloitte, CDW-G, and Lenovo. Without their support, this conference wouldn't be possible. Please remember to leave your microphones muted when you are not speaking to eliminate any potentially distracting background noise. Please use the raise hand icon if you do wish to speak, although I think most of this is going to be a presentation. I'm not sure if they'll really take a lot of questions, but you can also post your questions to the chat. That said, let's start the session. I'll be turning the time over to Jerry Sheehan, who is the Vice President and Chief Information Officer at San Diego State University, and also Eric Basu, who is the CEO of Haiku Inc. And they actually have a large group here today, and I will let them introduce their other group members as they give their presentation. Take it away.
Thanks very much, and thanks everyone for joining us in this Cal State Connect security theme topic. What we want to do over the course of the next 35 to 40 minutes is talk with you about the partnership to look at a different way of addressing some of the workforce development training needs in cybersecurity and how SDSU has approached this through a partnership with Haiku. We'll do some brief introductions here at the top of the hour of myself and Eric, and then we'll jump into a little discussion of what game-based learning is. We'll then showcase some of the game-based training that Haiku has pioneered. Then we'll jump into the implementation of this at San Diego State University. Lance Larson, our faculty advisor from our Department of Homeland Security, Ricardo Fitipaldi, our Chief Information Security Officer, will lead a panel discussion. We'll have some of the students who are participating in our student club in this area walk through a number of questions, and then we'll have an opportunity with some wrap up at the end from Eric, who will give some final thoughts and also a offering for other campuses in the CSU. If we could move to the next slide. Just briefly, I'm the Chief Information Officer at San Diego State University, Vice President for Information Technology. I'm going to let Eric introduce himself briefly, and then I want to talk about sort of the genesis of our partnership. But before I do that, let me let Mr. Basu, the CEO of Haiku, introduce himself. Eric?
Fumbling with the mute button. Yeah, thanks, Jerry, and thanks you for the opportunity to be here and as part of this panel and to work with San Diego State University. So my background, I'm a serial entrepreneur. My first career was as an officer on the SEAL teams. I built Centec Global. I founded that in 2001 and sold that to Deloitte, who's one of the sponsors on here, in 2021. And I developed Haiku largely as a result of the experiences I had at Centec, trying the struggles we had hiring people that had hands-on cybersecurity skills. And so, as we'll talk about a little bit later on, I developed Haiku to help address that gap for students that are graduating but didn't have the skills that I needed to put them into jobs right away.
All right, let's jump into the substance of our presentation. Let me talk just a little bit as the Vice President for Information Technology about what prompted our partnership with Haiku. So Eric has alluded to the fact that hiring cybersecurity professionals is challenging across all industry. It is particularly challenging for the CSUs. And one of the greatest areas that San Diego State University has had challenges in over the course of the last 3 years is trying to find cybersecurity professionals who would enter our workforce. In a lot of other areas that we've had success in creating pipelines that have allowed us to move in early career employees, we've done it through student participation. And as we started looking at our lack of success in finding candidates long-term, we thought that there was an opportunity to perhaps engage the students at San Diego State University in what could be of some bidirectional benefit. Basically, our first thought was, let's see if we can create a student employment program. The more we thought about that, the more challenged we were in knowing that what we were going to get was sort of the usual suspects with the usual constraints of leading to being able to work sort of in the IT field. So we, through a partnership with the Cyber Center of Excellence, which is a off branch of the San Diego Regional Economic Development Council, we were introduced to some novel experimentation that Haiku was doing in a platform that allowed you to basically enter a video gaming environment to teach real cybersecurity skills. So you can sort of think of it, if you would, as a Trojan horse. The goal is to use the game to really get students into a fully functional cyber range. As we started talking about opportunities to bring this into San Diego State University, one of the other thoughts that we had, two of them that we thought were really important. First, we're really focused on trying to figure out from a pipeline perspective how we could open opportunities to other segments of our community, in particular, those community members who might come from URM backgrounds. One of the things that we know is that gaming as a platform, both for the involvement of different ethnicities and also different genders, in particular women, is something that has proven to be an entree to some technical skills over in the STEM field. So we wanted to explore that. And as we thought more about what could we do that was novel, we decided the right way to approach this was to talk to Haiku about a potential partnership where the university would buy licenses, and Eric will talk about the very affordable platform that would allow us to create a student club. Then we would take and recruit folks to come into the student club. As a component of that, we would recognize through badging and also through some sort of micro transaction support, economic support for students who were moving through the platform, developing cybersecurity skills. And then at the end of that, we would take students who had gone through the platform, hopefully using that as a pipeline, to then begin a new program at San Diego State University, which would be our Security Sentinel, where essentially would take individuals who had worked through the student club who wanted to have an employment opportunity and offer them the opportunity to come into the IT division at San Diego State University, where they would continue their mentorship with our information security professionals, and then they would transition into the more sort of functional cybersecurity training that Haiku does in sort of their Haiku Pro level. So all of this really based on a partnership, looking at a workforce development way, trying to meet students where they are in a student club. And what we want to do is share that journey. I want to turn things to Eric right now so he can talk to you a little bit about the platform. And then again, we'll get into the student experience, which I think is really at the core of our excitement about this platform. Eric?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. I want to just note to everybody just how forward-leaning San Diego State University and Jerry are on this and his team. They're way ahead of anybody else we've talked to. We talked to a lot of universities, and a lot of universities are still doing the old school. I got a cyber lab that somebody cobbled together, a grad student or something, and they're saying this is our hands-on skills, and they're unaware of they are, unaware is probably the right word, of the fact that the students still are not getting the skills they need from that. And so Jerry is extremely forward-looking with that, I appreciate it. Our products are based on two primary concepts. One is that the concept that a good video game gets you in the flow within 15 minutes. And that was posited by Jane McGonigal in her book, Reality is Broken. The other is that a 10-year study by McKinsey that shows when your brain's in the flow, you're 500% exponentially more likely to internalize information. And so our games get the user in the flow, which you can only do with an actual video game. If you gamify a lab by throwing some leaderboard and some badges on it, nobody's getting in the flow from that, and nobody's learning differently. They're just trying to incentivize people to do the lab or watch the video. We actually get people in a game, get them in the flow. We have hundreds of anecdotes from people that say that they love the flow state of the game, and they're able to learn far more effectively from that. Probably the best anecdote I have of that is we actually used World of Haiku, the beginning levels, to help the Girl Scouts of San Diego get their cybersecurity merit investigator badge. And a group of girls came up to our station, a young girl, maybe 10 years old, first words out of her mouth were, "I'm no good at math." 45 minutes later, she's arguing with one of the other girls about whether one of the robots in the game was cuter than the other robot, completely unaware of the fact she had just learned command line Linux and about 5 offensive cybersecurity commands. And this became really, I got perspective on this when I talked to a university professor last week who said that he doesn't teach command line Linux to his students, undergraduate students, until after the end of the first semester because it's too difficult of a concept. But this 10-year-old girl learned command line Linux within 45 minutes. And that's the power of the games that we have. We layer in a lot of learning engineering techniques from Carnegie Mellon's Human Computer Interaction Institute as well. That's where Duolingo was born out of. We work very closely with them and they reviewed the game. They are the world leaders in using games to be able to teach people. On the back end, we map all of the skills to the NICE framework. That's the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. It's part of NIST. That's what most educators use. It's what a lot of government agencies use. And that provides an independent standard for making sure that the skills that you're learning are actually mapped to something that employers are looking for. And probably one of the most important aspects of using games for teaching, games cross every single demographic. And so if you want to increase diversity in the cybersecurity workforce, which is a goal I think we all need to be working towards, you need to be able to have methods of teaching that appeal to people who aren't naturally drawn to just learning cybersecurity on their own. Video games cross every demographic. We built the game as a role-playing game specifically because 60% of role-playing gamers are women versus only 24% of cybersecurity professionals. And we're working with groups like Crypto Harlem in New York City that works with extremely disadvantaged youths in New York City who will never have access, for the most part, to an AP calculus class, but they love the ability to play a game and get skills they can actually use to get a high-paying job. Next slide, please. And so I talked about this. You got a screenshot of a game here, and I'll show a video on the next slide. We use the actual video games. You're immersed in the game to teach the hands-on cybersecurity skills. In order to be able to move through the hero story, you have to actually do real-world skills. And on the back end, we're mapping all of those transparently to the user so that the player can then use those in a skills resume, or an employer or an educator can look at all the skills in an admin panel of all their students or their employees and figure out what their actual skill levels are. We're not measuring whether you got a cert or you passed a test. We're measuring how much time you spent at the keyboard typing in the nmap command, for example. I talked about the skills resume a little bit. The other thing we do is we actually take the skills the player is using and we bring in job postings that actually require those skills. That does a couple things. One is it shows the students and learners from an early stage, what kind of jobs could I get with these sets of skills? And then two is it actually connects students with jobs so that ideally, rather than graduating with a degree, going to a job fair and saying, hey, what kind of jobs do you have for me? Student has ideally already gotten a job or applied to a number of jobs that are directly related to what they want to do. Next slide, please. And go ahead, yeah, there we go. And so this is actually a video of what our game does. And so you can see it's an actual game, you go through it. I mentioned the learning engineering techniques that Carnegie Mellon University that we put in there. So one of those techniques is spaced interval learning, where the player, the learner actually learns a technique and you space out the introduction of that specific skill or technique in larger intervals to get it moved into your long-term memory. And for anybody that's used Duolingo, we've been called the Duolingo cybersecurity. You'll notice that's something you do is you get a word, then you get the word at longer and longer intervals, and then you haven't seen it for a few days, and then you'll go back and you get presented with the word again to get it into your long-term memory. One of the other techniques we use is interleaving, where you introduce a skill once, you introduce it a second time, you give the brain a break by doing something else, and then you come back. In the nature of a video game, you come back in the form of a boss fight or something like that. And now you're required to go back and get that skill, pull it out of your, your memory, and then be able to do that when you have a number of other cognitive distractions. And that also helps put it into long-term memory. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. We saw in this event that we did that Jerry and Lance are going to be talking about, a 24% average increase in skills measured before and after in hands-on skills after 70 minutes of game immersion. And addressing the diversity issue, we had Grossmont College students, 30 students play Haiku. Of those, 5 of the students, after playing Haiku, wanted to switch their majors to cybersecurity, and 3 of those 5 were women. And so the ability of game-based training to attract a large number of people who were previously intimidated, they'll look at Hack the Box, or they'll look at a cyber lab and go, I can't do this. This is too hard. Or like the young girl said, I'm no good at math. And they look at this and go, I can do this. And not only can I do this, I actually really enjoy this. This is pretty fun. And that's what we're doing with Haiku. Next slide, please.
Great. And Dr. Lance Larson, I'm the co-director of the Homeland Security Program on campus here at San Diego State University. I also work with our CISO, who you'll meet in just a minute. And as the faculty component of this project and this experience, we're real fortunate to be able to plug in our students. And what a better environment, if you can't think of it as a faculty member, to have private industry, university administration, university staff, and my students interacting together. Really difficult to be able to set up something like that. And so today we're really fortunate to have 4 students that'll be talking with you today in our Q&A portion, our question and answer portion that we will have in just a few minutes, guided by our CISO. And they're grad students. And so they really have a great perspective to give you on not only being a student, but what the industry wants and kind of how the industry's, what the industry is saying to them. What is cool about cybersecurity? What is neat about information technology? And so hopefully today, when we have that guided Q&A portion, we're really able to give you that experience. And to kind of walk us through that, I'll introduce our CISO, our Chief Information Security Officer here at San Diego State, Ricardo Fitipaldi. And next slide, please.
Great, thank you, Lance. And also I want to thank you, Jerry and Eric, for the great introduction and really providing the background of the project. What we want to do now is really showcase the stars of the project, our students. Is hear directly from them their experience. The 4 students that we have, they have different levels of experience in cybersecurity and IT, and they will be providing their unvarnished, uncensored, and a truthful experience with Haiku and how they are playing the game. I will start with the next question. This is to highlight our event before the next questions. So we had that day spent about 2 to 3 hours playing Haiku, a variety of people. This was an open event. This was our kickoff of our inauguration meeting from the student club event. Let's start with the questions. Next slide. This first question will go to Henry, and after Henry, Isaac as well. In what ways did you see Haiku's game-based learning as having advantages or disadvantages over traditional training methods you've tried before? Henry?
Thanks, Ricardo. So I think a lot of students can relate when I say that online learning, especially in recent times, it's not so fun. And having to go through classes and read through boring text that's like Section 7 of the US Code states that I can really appreciate gamification, and that when I'm learning, it doesn't really feel like work. It feels like what I'd be doing in my free time anyway. So gaining skills that I could apply to a workplace setting is kind of 2 birds with 1 stone. And I think back to how I learned typing and doing typing class in grade school, and in that class was just fun little games where you're using the keyboard and familiarizing yourself with it, and it didn't really feel like work.
Thank you, Henry. Isaac?
Good morning. My name is Isaac, SDSU HSEC student. First of all, thank you, esteemed panelists, for putting this together. This is awesome. So to answer the question, my main advantages, I would say, are, first of all, it's interactive. where it boosts engagement levels by making learning experience more interactive and fun. As Eric mentioned previously, it helps me personally retain information more effectively than through traditional methods. Secondly, I would say real-time feedback. I, as a player, receive immediate feedback. So if I enter a command incorrectly, or I don't know how to use a command, I can go immediately seek help, rectify my mistakes, enter the right command, and do whatever is necessary to implement the correct attack that we're implementing in the game, in this case. Obviously, adaptive learning. And then it simulates real world scenarios where you wouldn't really get in a lab environment. Those would be my list of advantages for actually playing the game.
Great. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Isaac. And I appreciate you highlighting that it's a safe, the hint into it's a safe environment where you can enter commands, you can attack or defend a scenario in a safe environment where you're not causing potential damage to other systems. So thank you for that. The next question will go to Saul. Saul, how is game-based learning augmented your cybersecurity learning at SDSU, if at all?
Thanks, Ricardo. Yeah, so Haiku, just like other games, provides the achievements and leaderboard, right? So it creates a sense of accomplishment. It allows me to, gives me that motivation to challenge myself and continue improving on my skills. Just like you mentioned, it does provide a risk-free environment. So you are able to learn from your mistakes. That's a huge component of it. You feel like you're comfortable in trying to use a command that you learned previously. And if you do make the mistake, it does give you that immediate feedback. Just like Isaac was saying, it helps, that immediate feedback helps you understand from your mistakes and gives you that full understanding of the commandlet that you're trying to use at that time, giving you that opportunity to continue learning.
Great. Next, what we want to do now is for all four of our students panelists. This is what we call a snap quiz. So after all, we are a university, so we have to have some quizzes. This is to be very short answers, very quickly, without a lot of elaboration. So staying with Saul, how long have you been interested in cybersecurity as a career?
I think in the last year, I've gained a lot of interest.
Great. Amber?
I've actually just been interested since I started this program, so about a year.
Great. Thank you very much. Henry, you go next.
I've been interested as long as I've known about the average salary for people in cybersecurity, so quite a few years now.
Great, thank you. Isaac?
I've been interested since my first 286 with 8K memory in elementary school.
Oh, 286, I remember those days. I had one. Next question. This next question will go to Amber and Henry. If you were the boss of the world for a year, where else would you apply game-based learning and why? Amber?
I think that I would apply game-based learning to politics. And the reason why would be because I think that a lot of people don't actually understand the politics of their country. And one of the ways that we could help people learn how the system works is by putting them in a game environment and making it easier to understand.
Thank you. Isaac? Oh, Henry, sorry.
Thanks, Ricardo. So I think that the workplace would be a great place to apply game-based learning. I find myself oftentimes very similar to online classes as at the beginning of COVID, going through very dry text-based learning. And it would be so much easier to apply context in real time and just have a game setting really ingrain that knowledge as it comes forth.
Perfect. Next question. This question will go to Isaac. How did the immediate feedback and interactive nature of the game-based event influence your learning process? Do you think this kind of instant feedback could be integrated into other subjects?
Hello, thank you. Yeah, so immediate feedback was my one of my biggest takeaways from this whole experience, where when you're working on an attack, you immediately know where you made the mistake, and you can correct and rectify any mistakes you've made. And just on the fly, just able to adapt my approach dynamically, leading to deeper and more effective learning experiences throughout this whole cybersecurity gaming experience.
Great. Any other panelists, student would like to elaborate or share also your experience related to immediate feedback? Saul, Amber, or Henry?
Hi, Ricardo.
Talk about that, Ricardo, real quick, about as the faculty member. So being in this environment, in this club, and watching my students interact with the game while being able to enjoy some pizza and interact with industry. It was amazing to be able to see first them interacting with industry, knowing that this could be creating their next job, but also that instant feedback. I didn't have to be there as a faculty member to grade their paper. They basically, I got to see their reaction. I got to see how they were interpreting and navigating this virtual map, trying to find the exit out of the maze. And so it was amazing for me to be able to see all of these students and seeing when they got into an issue and they had a problem they had to solve, their facial expressions, and then see them get a little frustrated, but then you could tell when they got past that choke point. And so it was really interesting for me to not have to worry as much about telling them if a grade was right or wrong, or if the answer that they put into a question was right or wrong. I got to see their reaction, and I got to see whether or not they were really getting it. And that for me was the best part of that immediate feedback. And I think Henry, you had an answer too.
No, Lance, I think that you covered it quite well. Just feeling the gratification at the end of the lesson, instead of having to wait months to see the fruits of your efforts, is just great. Just, you know, in a single hour, I can be rewarded for my hard work multiple times, rather than having to wait for that grade at the end of the year.
And we saw real time the joy and the frustration on the faces, and everyone that have played the video game know how rewarding it is when you move it to the next level, right? It is one of the greatest thing, and it reflects back what Eric was mentioning. Video game is primed to create the flow state. As we start playing and learning through that process, that flow state is what differentiates from other modalities. Thank you for highlighting that. Another snap quiz. So this is for everyone. We will start with Saul this time. Coolest tech that you currently use or wanted to use?
I think VR headset, like HoloLens. Wanting to use the new Apple ones and see how those are.
Great. Henry, coolest tech?
As someone who uses Outlook for work every day, I think that Gmail is the coolest tech that I use.
Okay, we can take that. Isaac, coolest tech?
The coolest tech, I think, is what's on the top of everybody's mind is ChatGPT, AI.
Great. Having one of those personal assistants, right? Amber?
I don't currently use any form of AI, but I'm really interested in it. So I think that's the coolest tech that I'm interested in.
Nice. Next question. This question will start with Saul and then Amber. Fast forward 10 to 20 years. how will your grandchildren, your children, or the next generation be using game-based learning to train for adulthood and other careers?
This is a tough one, Ricardo, because it puts me into perspective. I have a 4-year-old son, almost 4-year-old, and so he's already learning through game-based apps, right, on tablet. And so I think fast forwarding 10, 20 years when he's in high school, college, I can only imagine him continue to learn through game-based learning. And I even see AI being leveraged, right, to provide like a personalized learning experience where it measures his strengths, weaknesses, and even his interests, right? Where is he interested in? What he wants to learn. So I think it would be leveraged and be used in multidisciplinary fields, even in the workplace, right, for training, even taking a step back from cybersecurity and training, and just more on the awareness side, right? Even for everyone at staff, faculty at SDSU, being able to learn cybersecurity awareness through a game-based experience.
Great, thank you. So, Amber, your perspective.
Yeah, I think I feel similarly as to Saul, that in 10 to 20 years, I have a couple nephews and they are also already using game-based applications on an iPad to learn letters and numbers. But I think the next generation is going to use it to learn how to do their taxes and learn how to on-ramp into their career, whether it's in law enforcement, where they also already use some sort of game-based learning, all the way to tech engineers using game-based learning to create everything from civil engineering to water engineering.
Great. Next slide. We do have an extra question and we are prepared for those in case we do have time. So let's ask this question to all 4 of the panelists, and you can be brief as well. But based on your experience, what advice would you give to educators interested in incorporating gamification into the curriculum to enhance student engagement and learning outcomes? Stay with you, Amber.
Sure. So I think the best advice I would give to any educator interested in incorporating gamification into their course is to introduce it early on to the students, because that gives them an opportunity to learn it a little bit, play with it. And I think that there's a great power in getting students to engage with each other and their professors. So making the gamification fun, and then allowing them that freedom to struggle through things and not just giving them the answer right away. Our culture is very instant gratification, and I think that we create new learning neurons by actually figuring it out on our own, trying to get to where we're going without a lot of help, and using that game model to reach the next achievement.
Great. Saul?
Yeah, I would say they shouldn't think twice about it, right? It creates engagement, and the game is immersive, and you're really engaged in the game to the point where it even has some hints, right? You have a little sidekick that can give you hints, but because you're in a game, you also try to avoid getting those hints, because you're trying to compete with your peers. You're like, no, I'm not going to use the hint. I'm going to try to figure it out on my own. And even when you do decide to use the hint, right, it just pushes you in the right direction. It doesn't give you the answer. So it does create an environment where students feel comfortable playing a game and learning at the same time, right, making learning fun. So yeah, I would encourage faculty to incorporate game-based learning wherever they can.
Great. Isaac?
In my opinion, there are 2 things. One is gamified teaching shouldn't replace traditional teaching methods. It should be integrated and heavily leaned on. But I think combined with traditional learning methods, It's essential for learning. Number two would be with emphasizing real world application and scenarios, such as life skills and teaching teaching the younger generation how to conduct life and how to learn social skills, I would say.
Great. Henry, would you wrap up this section for us?
Sure, thanks, Ricardo.
With the last question.
I would encourage teachers to have students help each other, because for me personally, as I had peers who'd never been in the cybersecurity realm before, start to use Haiku, they had questions that made me consider my own understanding, and I learned from trying to explain. And I thought that was really helpful, and I was excited to share my newfound understanding with my peers, and that just increased learning all around.
Great. And I want to really thank you for all four of our panelists for your work and your answers and your participation. We wanted to give it some time. We are at 10:36. Give it some time to opportunity to the audience to have ask your questions as well. We will have one question at the Q&A, and I will read. I think this question would be better answered by Eric. And the question is, I see World of Haiku is available on the gaming platform Steam for public purchase. Is the SDSU experience the same as any person can pay for the experience themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. The version of World of Haiku that we used for the experience is the same as the one you can download on Steam for $24.99. Since then, we continually develop our products. We add new content every week and every month. So we have the content that's available on Steam. You can buy the basic product, and then you can download additional in-app purchases as well if you want additional content like SQL Map. Also on Steam, we have the Forge capability where you can actually drag and drop. I think it's still in beta, closed beta, but I think we're releasing it in the next few days, the next week, where you can drag and drop and create your own games within World of Haiku. So it allows people to develop a course, that they can actually do. We have another version called the professional version. It's just called Haiku. You can actually access it through a browser, so you don't have to have any downloads. And that's a subscription model that we have for World of Haiku. It has unlimited access to all the content. And then we have the Haiku professional version, which is, I'll be upfront, it's far more difficult than World of Haiku. You're actually dropped into AWS ranges, and you have a Kali Linux box, and you're performing some pretty complex techniques like buffer overflows and a number of other type of techniques. And we're actually unifying all of those into something we're internally calling Haiku Unified, but you'll have the ability to go through a World of Haiku mission, then you immediately go into a AWS-based range to practice what you learned with the training wheels off. And you actually are in a real Kali Linux box, the actual kind of tools you're going to be using on the job, and you're practicing the exact same skills you learned. So it's a long answer to your question, but hopefully I gave enough context for you.
Great, thank you, Eric. And I can attest for that. I played the World of Haiku Pro and was not easy. So if you're up to a challenge, go and sign up for Haiku Pro. We do have a couple of slides coming up next. And the first one is, if you're interested in learning more about the Haiku, we can point to the right directions, get the demo licenses for your campus, talking to the Haiku team. Eric and the Haiku are offering 25% discount to the CSU. And also there's a curriculum for game-based course in applied cybersecurity. So really there's a QR code, go check that out. And I wanna announce that also in September, we are planning for a large event with Haiku, and is the second semester of our student club initiation. So if you're interested, we'll send an email later to spread the word related to it, the September event. We are targeting toward the later week of September, probably around the 28th. We'll have more information about that. the last slide is with Eric.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so on the, sorry, if we could go back one more slide. I actually just wanted to talk about that in case anybody didn't get a chance to scan the QR code. The curricula we have is actually a curricula we're using for some colleges are using it. They're actually doing courses using that undergraduate curricula, and everything is mapped to the NICE framework so they can use it. And that allows a lot less heavy hands-on instructors and a lot more game-based immersion. So that's a free curriculum. Go ahead and download it. If you have any questions on about how to implement it, please just reach out to me. I think my email is on the next slide. If not, it's just Eric, ERIC at haikuinc.io. It's very easy. And then next slide, please. Okay, so we've got an event coming up, which is it's kind of an improvement or a follow-on, I guess, to the event that we did in a few months ago. And so we're going to have more students. We're actually going to involve the larger CSU campus group virtually. So we'll have, you know, a much larger group of students. We're inviting recruiters, we're inviting employers, so that we can basically connect the full life cycle of students who are learning to get into cybersecurity, you know, the educational universities that are helping to get them the skills that they need, and then the employers who can, you know, get early eyes on for students that that they want to hire later on. And so that should be a really, really fun event. I think we're playing off all the, you know, great stuff that came out of the last event, and we're doing it on a much larger scale. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned, and we'll make sure that we're in touch with SDSU. Is obviously going to be very heavily involved in this from a in-person point of view.
Great. Before we close this session, I wanted to go back to CIO Sheehan and ask you any last comments, any last close up for this session.
No, I just want to thank everyone for participating. Really appreciate the time from our students and their willingness to engage with us in sort of this innovative approach to trying to see if we could open more doors to cybersecurity skill. Again, really all of this would be impossible without Eric and his great organization. And I think the other thing that I would just note, there are lots of vendors in the world. The thing that's important to understand about Haiku is that they've been a partner and that they come from a deep intellectual understanding versus just trying to slam together a product, get it out there so they can make profit. Certainly Eric is not against making profit, but he's doing it in a way that is sustainable based on trying to figure out how you really transform the ability of folks to learn skills. We think that this was a novel approach. Thank everyone for their time today and hope you have a great rest of the Cal State Connect conference.
Okay, thank you very much all. Thank you, San Diego State and Haiku. Thank you for everyone that was participating as well. Let's keep the conversation going by going to the Cal State Tech Community Slack channel, and I will put the, there's the link right there in the chat. Be sure to visit the lobby for your itinerary of what's next. Please keep an eye out for our industry-led sessions presented by our technology partners, because we would not be able to bring you these Cal State Tech experience without these partners. So let them know that you have their support here as well. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all in the next session.